Everybody, welcome back to the Here for the Truth podcast. I hope you guys are doing well. So good to be able to have this conversation that we just had with the great Lubomir Arsov. If you aren't familiar with his work, he's the director and animator and creator behind 2017 short animated film In Shadow, A Modern Odyssey, and more recently, Kingdom. These are incredibly powerful and impactful short films, which if you haven't seen, I highly recommend that you do. They're almost like open-eyed meditations in and of themselves, just watching those videos. So definitely check those out. I think you're going to get a lot of value from this conversation. If you're down, hereforthetruth.com is a home base for a lot of awesome material. And we actually have 2 quizzes which we've created, which are available there. One is the Real AF test, which really is a litmus test for how authentically you're showing up in your life. And I think the feedback that can be gained from that quiz can really be used as a powerful mirror just to be like, all right, where do I need to show up? And how can I step up in a greater degree? Because really at the base of what we do and what's energizing our own motivations in this podcast and in our work is showing up more authentically. Because what else are you here for? What else are you here to do? And I think it's really important at times in our lives for all of us to kind of just zoom out and have the experience of, what is this? What is happening right now? What is going on? The primordial question of who am I and why am I here? And for those that have listened to our podcast for a long time, I think you're fully aware that, deep down, we feel that every single human being on this planet has a unique purpose, has a unique reason, has a unique way of being, has a unique way of interfacing with reality and with others around them. And that's what we're about. That's how this conversation started way back on episode 1 with Walking the Authentic Path. That is the motivating energy behind our program, Rise Above the Herd, our 10-week journey, which currently is in progress. And you can go join the waitlist at riseabovetheherd.co if you feel called. But yeah, I just want to leave you with that contemplation. So, but just remember, you're here for a reason. And we hope to remind you through our work, through our conversations, and through the resources available on our website, in our communities, and in our group coaching programs. Please enjoy this conversation.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
All right, everybody, we have an incredible guest with us here today, Lubomir Arsov. His personal work explores the psychological, parapolitical, and spiritual dynamics that define the momentous time of transition we are collectively navigating. In 2017, he released his first award-winning animated film, In Shadow, A Modern Odyssey, exploring the fragmented unconscious of our times, followed by the 2024 release of Kingdom, a visceral audio-visual experience which maps out the initiatory path of empowerment. Professionally, he's worked in various phases of production and IP development for both major and boutique animation studios, and a variety of film and TV projects for clients like Netflix, Warner Brothers, Blue Sky, Mattel, Disney, and among others. His latest project includes directing the reimagined He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and writing and directing the dystopian sci-fi short The Forest King. Lubomir is known for a kinetic visual style that weaves an eclectic aesthetic with mainstream appeal and excels in crafting narratives that condense complex ideas into accessible and entertaining experiences. His artistic mission is to convey with clarity and reverence the sacred depths of the inner self and reveal the forces which seek to thwart it. I absolutely love it, man. I came across your work, I think 2018 or 2019. In Shadow is such a powerful short film, and especially for the time in which it was made, because you tapped into a lot of things that, only recently are coming deeper into the mainstream consciousness, I guess, that we can say. But such a pleasure to have you here, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, brother. Thank you guys for having me on. It's really looking forward to diving in and seeing where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely, man. One way we always like to kick this off with first-time guests is we really want to dive deep into your personal hero's journey, actually. Like, what kind of led you down this path? What are the things that I guess most impacted and influenced your psychological and spiritual development? Because your work is obviously so deep, it's intense, it's powerful. So even some of the major catalyzing rites of passage in your life that I guess led you down this way.
Yeah, well, I've always had a curiosity about, there's been a philosophical inclination in asking questions of existence itself, kind of a metaphysical, ontological curiosity. But things got a little bit more serious when my reality got recontextualized through plant medicines and looking into shamanic realms, in the mid 2000s. And from there, some things just got a little shaken up enough so that I could move through my usual, sort of like the regular lens of reality that I was looking through and start looking at things more deeply. And also, of course, the ever-present, I think most people can agree, relate to this. It's the ever-present metaphysical sort of like existential angst and even emotional and psychological pain and discomfort, that we all carry to various degrees. And for me particularly, that led to a lot of questions and in terms of seeking what greater reality is, what the meaning of life is, and why am I suffering in my own particular way. So that ultimately led into being awoken to the geopolitical situation and the parapolitical situation of how this reality is actually structured, how resources are partitioned, how incentives are created, and ultimately the narratives that we live according to, which, when I was younger, I just took for granted, are actually largely manufactured and co-manufactured by us, those who also suffer from them.
Yeah. Lubomir, I'm curious. You had mentioned, obviously, you always had this curiosity about life and a philosophical bent. Were your parents anything like this? I'm curious, like, if this was just something that like uniquely sprung from you, or like you had some influences in early on.
Well, I'm Bulgarian, and my parents grew up in communist Bulgaria. So they were quite aware of the limitations of communism, the inability to speak freely and everything else that came with that political climate. So growing up in Bulgaria, 1989 is when communism fell in the East Bloc. And before we immigrated to Canada, which was 1994, that kind of skepticism of authority that was present in my family rubbed off on me. In addition to Bulgaria, parts of Bulgaria are quite mystical, spiritually oriented, and there's a great heritage of our mountains and a lot of our folk traditions, wisdom, healing. And some of that started coming through and awakening a lot more in the collective awareness of the Bulgarians after communism fell. And as you know, communist or any authoritarian dictates sort of closed down any of the organic heritage of humanity and cut down any of the wisdom and, actual, real, true spiritual self-awareness. And in that process after communism, some things happened with my family, some very interesting I would say spiritual things that really snapped the whole family out of our more materialistic lens of life.
Yes, thank you. We're neighbors. My parents are born and raised in Greece.
Right on. I still have to visit.
Yes. I've never been to Bulgaria. Do you still go back often, or do you have?
I do occasionally visit. Yeah.
Do you think, so coming from, I guess, a country with a communist bent and then finding yourself in the West, particularly, I guess, in 94, 95, do you think that gave you a unique lens as to kind of what was beginning to encroach in Canada and in America, then in some countries in the West? Like, would you say that you probably sensed that a little bit earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. And are you asking particularly about my family or myself? Or
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely there has been a bit more of a skepticism and perhaps a healthy amount of paranoia in terms of COVID for sure. But I had already done my I had gone through at least 10 years of my own research, my own awakening, and my own tracking of the movements of this greater centralizing force that has been creeping up on humanity overall. So when COVID hit, it was apparent that something was not right. And, if I were to add some color commentary here and beyond so just common sense and being rooted and grounded in reality, especially, let's say, just for us as men, we have a responsibility and a task to kind of see things clearly and respond to them clearly, actively, and responsibly. And so, of course, that happened during COVID because things didn't make sense. And because I've untethered myself somewhat from structures of authority, I source a lot of my sense making from myself. But also I would say on a deeper spiritual, intuitive level, it did feel like something bigger and darker was coming. It felt like a cloud, a dense fog was moving in. And I felt it right on New Year's Eve of 2019 and 2020. I thought, we were in Toronto at that time. And I thought it was going to be something else. I thought I was, at that point, tracking demographic warfare and a lot of the other things that empire is utilizing at this time. And I thought Toronto would be having a lot of issues with that, tracking a lot more gang violence and, a lot of the discord that comes with the destabilization of a nation. But it actually turned out to be something unexpected. And I think that's how reality always is, right? And COVID came about. But yeah, and throughout, which is why I assume you guys have both seen my last film, Kingdom.
Yeah.
Part of Kingdom was also really translating parts of what I felt, which is this coming down of, and it's not necessarily a possession, but something that I started feeling it. It started seeping into people, started knocking on my door and slightly like trying to peer within my body system. And it was something that just wanted to, it was just moving through people as a wet blanket.
Yeah. It's what's so like interesting is like with In Shadow, which is 2017, like you kind of preempted a lot of what COVID was, even like I think as an artist highlighting vaccine dangers in Shadow is incredibly courageous in 2017 because the topic of vaccines in themselves was completely taboo pre-2020, pre-2021. Like, you could barely say the V word without being completely ostracized and stereotyped in a certain way. But you hit on the masking, you hit on the authoritarian dynamic mixed in with pharmaceuticals in there and all the rest of it. So like it kind of feels like you were definitely tapped into something that was about to present itself in a deeper and darker way even back then.
Yeah, well, as I was mapping out my understanding of the world and, having that paranoid, meme thing of like all the strings attached to all the photos and articles, like that was, of course, part of it. The pharmaceutical cartel is part of this great destabilizing force. Yes, it's for profit. And, more maliciously, we could say that it's also for weakening human beings by and large. But I was already tracking that. So, of course, I was going to put that in the tapestry I was presenting of In Shadow. And yeah, people see it as, have seen that as prophetic. And maybe in some ways it was. I think maybe In Shadow was prophetic in a way that I was anticipating a gradual deconstruction and a collapse of regular meanings that we were ascribing to society, to the world, that all the maps of meaning were going to start collapsing and that we had to renew them. And including those maps, in addition to those maps of meaning, it was going to be our own egoic structures, our own masks and personalities, which were just not going to be functional anymore to keep us satisfied or sane. Yeah,
because the biggest thing that hits me in watching In Shadow is just the undeniable pitfalls of the inauthentic path and where the inauthentic path is leading individuals and the collective. And that it's almost like spirit or the divine or life in itself was not going to tolerate that and any further. And I think more and more ever since like that 2020 kind of shift, it's like people realize that the truth is the highest path. But there's no choice but to choose authenticity because the costs of looking the other way are really dire,
Yeah.
It almost felt like 2020. I mean, I look back in hindsight, but even then, like it had to happen. Like, why argue with reality? Like, it's something that occurred, it's something that happened in order for all this to come forth.
Yeah, I agree. It was a necessary thing and kind of a blessing as well. I think we all needed it, just to see the extent to which we're all captive in this whole collective system, because like everyone participated in it. Everyone. I wouldn't say there were victims and victors and abusers. I mean, in a way, yes, when we start breaking it down, that is true. But also from a zoomed out perspective, it takes all of us to participate in this drama. And it diagnosed the collective state of consciousness, which we needed. It really diagnosed it. There was a litmus test of, our just collective intelligence.
Yeah, for sure.
I really loved the conversations in 2020 that I had with people that came from communist countries, because they were the ones that just sniffed it from the start. I mean, I didn't come from a communist country and I sniffed it from the start, so there's other reasons there. But still, like, it's really fascinating to see how they can sense what was happening because they had seen it before.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, your story reminds me a little bit of, one of my biggest philosophical influences is Ayn Rand, coming from Soviet Russia. And then, she saw what was the seeds that were being planted in the West immediately. And she imbued that philosophy into her stories, into her art, into her fiction as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've read both The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and also Anthem I've read. I think she has some other books, maybe not novellas, but yeah, she's definitely a big influence. But yeah, it's beautiful. Like Ayn Rand, actually, just like Dostoevsky, another Russian writer, those have been big influences on me because they were human beings who put their finger on the pulse of the current situation. They felt themselves deeply and what really mattered to them. And then basically used all their artistic, creative, and personal power to put it in these works so that it can contribute to humanity. And Ayn Rand, huge figure.
Yeah, man. And it's like, in many ways, these great works of art, that are imbued with an important philosophical and psychological message are like the most important milestones, for humanity when they come along. And man, today I've got to say, like, you are definitely one of those artists for sure, because there's no doubt the seeds that you're planting through your works have huge ripple effects and impacts. I want to backtrack a little bit. Like, when did you start to consider the creative path as a career for yourself? How was, I guess, your creative path? How did that unfold? And even like visually and filmmaking, like how did it come to be where it's like, oh, I'm a storyteller, I'm a filmmaker, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah, so I think looking back, I could definitely track it more to a soul path. And I say that with more confidence now, just because I've collected more data. But I just had an incredible visceral reaction to seeing animation cells and traditional Disney animation when I was a child. That means like seeing actual drawings move. So something about that magic like really inspired and excited me. And then later on, it was comic books, films, movies, and any moments of, I love all cinema, but something about drama and sweeping epics that would reach almost like the sublime. Really resonated with me, really infused me with some sort of calling. And so I had no plan B. After high school, I just went straight into animation. I didn't even get into the school that I wanted to, but I pursued that. And it was always just this feeling of wanting to create meaningful storytelling, meaningful moments. It's as simple as that. And then that translated into my view of reality, my general curiosity about human nature, about myself, about the makeup of societies. And the next logical step was infusing that interest that I had, my observational skills and ability to synthesize meaning out of observation into my craft, which was the craft of storytelling. And that fire still burns in me. Except the difference now is the stories that I want to tell require a lot more resources and manpower. And, of course, it's possible to achieve. It's just that my previous personal work, I did simply because it could not have been made if I had asked permission of anyone. Mm-hmm. And so it's a point of, it's a point of some pride that I actually carried through with these pieces. Looking back, I don't even know how I did them, how they happened, and of course the allies and all the people that helped me with them, but I'm glad that I did.
I love it. As someone who trained as an actor for about a decade and is in that storytelling world, I'm not anymore. I'm curious, like, what are some of these movies that like really impacted you as a kid, like animated movies and some of these epics that you talked about?
Man, so I'm so bad with like lists of favorites. I need to come up with some sort of spreadsheet so I have like ready-made answers. But I'll shoot out like, yeah. So I like from cinema. I like anything from like older kind of more fringe European stuff, like Jean-Luc Godard and a lot of the kind of new wave stuff to all the like a lot of the Hollywood epics. So a lot of the big feels. It's interesting, I've tracked, like I used to pride myself on having an eccentric cinema taste, but at the same time, my orientation, and I think I know why, is to make deep but widely accessible pieces. So, I of course reacted strongly to things like Braveheart and Gladiator, and it's like, Braveheart is kind of like an anthem for our generation. Of on so many points of just like strength, like honor, duty, brotherhood, and overcoming like real hardship, like romance, all that stuff. Fight Club affected me immensely, actually. In 1999, I was in grade 11 and I saw it multiple times in the theater. And yes, David Fincher, great director, great act, like just the whole piece was made really well, but something about it triggered my still developing, not yet complete desire and direction to be antithetical and to really challenge the status quo. And that movie was definitely a visceral, punch to the gut to a lot of teenage boys, men in their early 20s, being like, we were ending the 90s. There's modernity, there's the MTV generation, especially in North America. We still had, suburbs. Like it was cool. Nothing was really that bad, except that it seemed like meaning was not, like people were sort of dying due to a lack of meaning, and modernity was reaching its very end, right? And so Fight Club made a big statement about that.
Yeah, same here for me. It was my first year of university in Boston when that came out, and I feel similarly in that regards. And when you mentioned the two epics, or mentioned great epics, like the first two movies that came to mind were Braveheart and Gladiator immediately. So, I mean, those movies had a huge impact on me in my life and even in my journey. So, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, but let me just drop a few other things. Like, man, there's so many. I mean, cinema.
I know we could have an entire podcast on cinema and movies.
Yeah. But even like, I just want to honor some of the animated films. Like, for good or bad, Disney, of course, the Disney legacy of just creating these stories and there's just a magic to the classical films. And Pinocchio, for me, a lot of my friends know me as the Pinocchio guy because like everything I do, even I directed this other short called The Forest King, and it's about digital puppets. There's something about puppets that has stayed with me, and that journey of becoming a real human from a puppet on strings is a fascinating one. And in Westworld, for instance, a TV show, it did something similar. Puppets in this case were the cyborgs, programmed, lifelike robots that finally find consciousness. And that's just so analogous to our journey here on Earth. So yeah, anyway, I'll leave it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, man. I mean, that makes a lot of sense in retrospect now, knowing some of your work. And I guess in general today, what we would call the NPC, I guess can be the modern day puppet, like the human being who hasn't accessed their own will, who doesn't know themselves, whose every thought, action, and behavior is purely programmed and conditioned by, culture, religion, family, whatever it might be, and that process of shedding those layers, cutting the strings, and discovering the deeper self is becoming the real boy, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel some sadness because this is it's an episode of something that I directed, and it's not widely seen just because it's not on YouTube. It's called The Forest King, and that's exactly, I wrote and directed it during COVID, And in it, like we have NPCs in a VR virtual reality game in which a boy has to basically imitate the various things that the NPCs do in order to get a social credit score. So very much what you're saying, actually, like wrote another piece, it basically elucidating just that, because you're right. Yeah. The NPC is the puppet. And we all have a little bit of NPC and a little bit of puppet in us. And we're trying to shine light on that and emancipate ourselves. And that's kind of the beautiful journey here.
Yeah, it's a never-ending process, really. I mean, the work is never done in that regard.
Lubomir, obviously you've worked, in many mainstream institutions or establishments. I mean, the movies or the animated shorts that we've talked about that you've made challenge the status quo. Like, what's been some of the feedback from people in your world that have seen it, or are they not aware? Do you have like separate lives where you work for Netflix, and then you have like this underground where you make these movies that go against the system?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think I mentioned elsewhere, I wish I had some juicy conspiratorial stories of being like brought to a back room and punched in the left eye or something, whatever they do, And no, but it's more like quiet, like silence. Yeah, I don't think a lot of my peers get what I've been doing. I think the best I've received is like, oh, it's a capitalist critique. And it's like, yeah, and somewhere you could say that, but really it's a lot more. And that's totally fine. Some people have reached out, some people have communicated with me, and some opportunities have opened from people who know what's up in the industry in Hollywood, and they themselves walk a tightrope. But that's changing. That will change. And I believe new storytellers are coming up, and storytelling will be democratized for good or bad. I think good things will be coming as everything gets restructured, right? Like in entertainment and, God willing, medicine, government, all that stuff. We'll see.
I think it's happening too. I think, the fact that, again, not to get too political, but just even the idea that one candidate spent millions upon millions upon millions of dollars hiring celebrities, to promote and advocate for her. And much of the population just does not care anymore what celebrities think, So I think like certain, I feel like the veil is falling away. And I think people they don't put as much emphasis on Hollywood like maybe in the past.
Yeah, they don't. And it's really cool to see the fatigue from general mainstream culture and the way that its culture has been curated and how that is collapsing. We're seeing it in real time. And also, RFK's nomination, we'll see what that actually means. But so far, it's like, whoa, that's amazing. This man can do so much. Just the fact that that is happening means, I think in the collective, there's enough consciousness here that we're allowing space within the field for something like that to occur. So yeah.
I agree with you there. I mean, it's easy for many people to be like, whatever, RFK is controlled opposition, or all these people are controlled opposition. Like, they don't have faith that like organic change can happen. The fact that, 5 years ago, the idea that someone like RFK Jr. could be at the highest position in the U.S. government around health, you would be laughed at.
Yeah. Yeah.
That someone you can say even though he wouldn't call himself that, an anti-vaxxer, is leading the charge for the U.S. government. Like that's kind of mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, like it's so interesting, this whole journey, even the alternative scene, which now is becoming more of the mainstream scene, right? So we used to be the alternative, holding certain views of reality and knocking on everyone's door, being like, hey, open your eyes wider, look at it from this perspective. This is not what it actually is. As we're onboarding more and more people, we're also seeing a lot, like there's a lot of work to be done in our sphere as well, because there's this chronic negativity and an inability to envision something that is good, right? And that's a negativity bias that is very easy to just coast on. And I think we all know what that's like, because it doesn't take too much effort. You don't need any conviction, and there's no real skin in the game, because you can always write off any failure in the world or anything around you and be like, see, ultimately it doesn't matter. And I get that. And so people also have to play it safe. Also, now that more and more people are online, I understand that, of course, as a creator and needing to get budgets and work and other things. I get what it's like. We have to be careful on how we express certain things as they're unfolding. So there's that. But a lot of it also is people don't actually, and this may be a trauma response, but I can see it in myself. We don't actually have the ability to map out a positive outcome for anything in our lives because we're used to so much disappointment. And we're very careful not to be disappointed yet again, like we have been since the beginning of our lives. And many of us live in this chronic shutdown and doubt and in a way, envy of any light outside of us, even though we may purport to we're working for the light and want to awaken people. So there's just a lot of work to be done. And I think here there's a reason to be hopeful and not to throw out the baby out with the bathwater. A sign of a mature mind, of a mature human, is the ability to hold multiple perspectives at the same time and just hold them. Like we don't have to even believe them or accept them. It's like we're holding them, we're drawing more data, and we're making certain conclusions. But we're also, as creators, we have the ability to actually have a vision of what could be and not fully commit to it, but just be like, that could also happen. And that is a power, that is a strength, that is a sign of character that we can do that. Leave it at that.
Yeah, you're speaking our language, man. Even just the ability to stand in between and have a healthy, detached awareness of, like, again, different options, what's going on without getting emotionally hijacked. And it takes so much. It takes a healthy mind, it takes a healthy body, it takes a regulated nervous system to be able to even take this in and to consider without jumping to conclusions. And it's a journey. I'm not perfect, by any means, but I keep working towards that. I keep checking myself. And you hit the nail on the head with data. It's like, can you allow more data in and consider it? And I think most people, it's like the first thing they hear, they jump on that. This is it. This is the truth. This is what I believe. Or their favorite influencer does a new post, and it's like, okay, now this is what's really happening. But can you take a step back and just chill and live in uncertainty? Why do you have to carry the sword of, I know, I'm certain, this is what's going on, as opposed to I don't know. There are a lot of curious things happening in the world in different situations on many different levels. And do I have the capacity to be in that, I guess, vulnerable state of not knowing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. Exactly. And I can, now because we're much more programmed and we program ourselves into the dopamine hits that we get from social media, from scrolling, whether it's Telegram, Twitter, Instagram. It's a lot more difficult for a lot of us to sit down, create space, and within that space to hear our own voice, and then allow within that space, as you said, the data, the information, the opinions, the beliefs to just land for us to hold them. But when we don't have that space, we receive the thing and it vibrates so quickly within this little spectrum of existence that we have. And it agitates us, right? And it creates all these stressful reactions. And so with with AI and a lot of other more sophisticated manipulation techniques, one of the greatest tools and one of the shortcuts to real maturity and wisdom right now is truly creating that bandwidth of expanding, being able to go into stillness while there is agitation within our nervous system, while there's agitation in our chest, in our head, but really to hold that space and then to allow ourselves to really make real choices instead of be guided by even alternative clickbait,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the work. And that's why I think I really love, your animated films, is that you're highlighting the inner work that needs to be done. I mean, we can get so lost in the external world, and yet there's this universe within us. And there's so many things we have to navigate and explore and consider, how we were raised, the things that we went through, the programming that is there, what is the state of our emotional life? I just think the gaze needs to be put more inwards. Instead of getting lost in the cacophony of noises and distractions out there.
Yeah. And widening that space was encapsulated so beautifully in a quote that we've shared so many times by Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's what liberation is, man. It's widening that gap. It's widening that space. Like we've said many times that we believe free will is a spectrum, because your capacity to choose your direction, choose your response, choose your behaviors really is dependent on how much space you have created between stimulus and response. And the NPC, so to speak, it's extremely limited, that space.
Yeah, it's very automatic. Very automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah. And, one thing that you guys were touching on previously with, the quote unquote ever growing black pill community where like it's difficult to see any light, is difficult to see any hope. To me, that's just another emanation of the quote unquote NPC,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And it's actually doing the dark work for the same forces that black pillars are pointing to. Why? Because when we're black pilled, we are generating a vision of disempowerment and defeat. Yeah. And then we're acting on it, and we continue to amplify it by attaching extreme emotions to it and trying to convince other people that that's how it's going to be. Yeah. So in a way, what's the point of even doing anything at that point?
Yeah. I agree, man. Can you dive into a little bit like your own personal creative process? Like how do these things unfold for you? Like inspiration strikes, the muse visits, like you start pulling that thread. Like what's that like for you?
And even how you create. Like I'm not a technological person, so like I watch what you create and I'm like, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah. To be honest, on the technical side, I have some limited means at my disposal. So working with people better than me and greater teams, we create better things. But when I do independent things, things are a bit rougher around the edges. And much respect to In Shadow, I was helped by two great compositors, not to be confused with composers, who basically put a lot of my art together and made it move. So, but yeah, in terms of the inspiration, it's I smile and laugh because it's a beautiful thing that I'm embracing more and more of, and I am appreciating those moments when the muse really strikes. Mm-hmm. And you guys can probably relate to that because we all have inspiration moving through us. And Joel, I just heard your last album, which is excellent, and it's that feeling of inspiration that a lot of times I've just shelved for later, and then I come back later and it's gone. And as I mature as a creator, as an artist, I've learned to more often than not drop what's happening and go with the muse. Of course, my life, I don't want to be negligent to anything important, but I do that because there's something very powerful to that. And then I can at least capture the signal with notes, drawings, and structure it so that when I come back to it, some of that essence is still alive. The energy is still alive, that I can reawaken it, reignite it, and I can start pulling more at the strings and then allowing more inspiration to come through. But for me, a lot of it has to do with music, actually. So both In Shadow and Kingdom came through accompanied by a piece of music, a singular track for each piece. So In Shadow came through with a track by carbon-based lifeforms. They're an ambient electronic duo from Sweden, very well known, masters in their craft. The song is called MOS 6784, I think. It's a dark ambient track that has a certain flair of hopeful, yet dark, yet progressively moving kind of way. And that song, I listened to it 100 times while I wrote all the beats of In Shadow. And we also, of course, composed a really good track. A few guys here from Toronto, including DJ Dub, who's a friend of mine, composed a brilliant track. He also worked on Kingdom, but Kingdom came through with this one track. It's an epic track by Secession Studios. Greg Dombrowski on YouTube, he creates a lot of cinematic tracks. This one track is called Born a Legend. And I used to listen to it while directing He-Man, because when I directed He-Man, I'd read the scripts, and I'd break down each scene for my storyboard artists so that I knew what I wanted from each scene, what I wanted for the acting, for whatever, just to launch them on that scene. And I would cut my animatics, which is the rough cut of the episodes, to a lot of his music. And so that song really stood with me. I started working out to it. I started just getting pumped up to it. And during COVID, I would listen to that song and I'd get these images of just like getting off your knees and raising the sword, like the simplest, most direct symbol there is, which is a viscerally felt sense, like getting up and standing like a real human, a rarity on this earth, the bipedal, human on your feet. So music, I'm kind of going off on too many tangents now, but music is definitely one of the primal things because it has an emotional resonance and it holds me in that field. And within that field, I can just start exploring characters, scenes, situations, dynamics, and things come to me much more easily.
Thank you so much for sharing that, man. I love so much hearing your process. And I'm the same with you, like you have to honor the muse, you have to cultivate that relationship with her. And so like when she comes, it's like, okay, this is, you're now my priority. And I have to put myself in a position where I've captured that energy, I guess, in a detailed enough way where you're right. Then I can come back and revisit it and really extrapolate that to its full extent. But I mean, that's so pivotal. So like, many creators and many artists out there, they get inspiration, they start something, they lose motivation, they drop it, they turn to the next thing, etc. But I think there's really something to be said for like following through, and you start something, you take it all the way, you get all the juice out of it. What can you say, I guess, to any creators or artists that might be listening in terms of like following through with the process, sticking something out, even when the motivation wanes, etc., like taking it to the next step and getting a finished project on the other side?
Yeah, well, like Stephen Pressfield said, the club of those who have completed something and shipped it is a small group of people, because it takes a lot of fortitude to get it all the way. And you have at all times this adversarial force within you constantly sabotaging in the form of fatigue, despondency, doubt, loss of interest. And sometimes that's valid because just the path we've picked or the project we've picked is not the right one. And we should probably know that in the first third of creation. But every single endeavor, like this seems to be the law. And thank God that we kind of collectively have realized it now, is that we always reach roadblocks. And in fact, completing something and taking it all the way to the end is a spiritual endeavor. That means it's a path of personal initiation, and we are the only ones who are fully responsible for it, and we do it to really satisfy the honor of our own soul.
Yeah.
So, not to make it too heavy, but these are the facts of the matter, really, at a deeper level. If we want to truly complete something, I think we need to really tap into the big why of why we're doing it, and really see it as a spiritual journey. That even if this thing has no real promise of succeeding, even if we may know that, I think there's a big responsibility to take it all the way through, because that in itself is a huge new milestone and a huge new baseline for our personal development. And in a way, in the universe, in this world, in this realm, we've just kind of like planted a flag and being like, I did something all the way. And it's a good big thing. So.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for that. I agree with you, man. I've had goosebumps multiple times throughout this conversation, but it really is just like an exercise of the will, the will of the soul, the will of the spirit, just to see something through, to get that inspiration and to bring it forth into material completion. Like, you're right, that is a spiritual practice, a spiritual exercise. I think for many people, like when it's left unfinished, like I think that is probably a common theme among that person's life in general, like starting something, not finishing it, not seeing it through. And we need will, and I think particularly in this culture, in many ways, it's like we shy away from achievement. We shy away from the real embodied feeling of pride that comes on the other side of completing a project like that. Like, I love that pride. I don't shy away from it. I don't diminish it. It's like, no, that's there. And it's like, that's really meaningful to me. And like, that encourages me onto the next thing as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to say, for anyone that's in the creative process now or will be entering it, every time I've completed a personal project, for now it's been 3 major ones, about 70% in, I always feel that doubt, and like the whole thing just does not work. It's going to be a failure. It's not coming together. And somehow the last 30% just come together once I push through. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, when you're in the process, you know, what is success to you? Like, what do you envision success to be on the other side of a project?
In terms of the project, well, success, I would say, is accomplishing a good portion of the vision, and the intention of the project is legible within the final product, that the transmission that was intended or was discovered along the way and adapted to, that happens often, is within the piece. Because then we can be satisfied with knowing that our craft is strong enough that we can then translate some of those real impulses out into the audience. So that's kind of like good. Now we can continue to sharpen those skills and we can move forward and make more. So that's one part of the success. Two is, like we said, just completing it and finishing it. And that's a personal milestone. That's something we can, go take a bath with and enjoy, just to have a glass of wine just with ourselves and be like, yeah, man, you did it. Because it's valid. And then, of course, beyond that, this is not up to us. This is, by the grace of God or the grace of the collective. It's that the art actually moves through people and does something that it's intended to do. It doesn't need to be profound. It could be just instilling joy or a spark of hope, or, just creating a pleasant, tingling sensation, whatever the art piece is. As long as it then actually transmits something to the people that it's meant for, then that is a success. So I would say those three things.
Amazing,
Also,
man. One thing I want to add, in my personal process, what I've found, success for me is me on the other side, knowing that I didn't settle at any point along the way. Because early on in my earlier creations, when I was younger, etc., it's like, oh, it's good enough, like the verse, the piano, the beat, the whatever, like, it's like there would be an element of settling just to kind of get through. But especially now, I feel like as I've matured in my process, it's like, if I instinctively know it's not as good as it can be, like, then I'm not settling anymore. And so with my latest album, Scorpio, like getting on the other side, like that feeling of knowing I didn't settle at any point along the way, like every lyric is meaningful. Nothing's just a giveaway or a throwaway. For me, that's when I was like, okay, that feels like success to me.
Huge. That's huge.
Lubomir, I got two questions. Well, first off, I'm curious, once the muse first visited you, let's say for In Shadow or Kingdom, from that moment until the project gets finished, like how long did that take? That's my first question.
For In Shadow, yeah. So it's difficult to quantify like if I was working on it full time, which I wasn't, but I worked on the visuals, the planning, and all that stuff because I drew everything myself in about 1 year. Mm-hmm. And then it took 2 extra years to get the help that I needed to put it all together with some of the other guys because we really had no budget.
Yeah.
And so In Shadow took 3 years, even though the fresh idea for In Shadow came to me in 2012. And I already had the vision, I had some of the scenes, but it was fleshed out in 2014 and 2015. And then it took 2 years before it came out in 2017.
Very cool. And then do you like release it to your YouTube channel and then just, okay, let's see what happens? Or do you have a process of like, let me share it with the people? Let me like, cause a thing goes viral. I'm always curious why something goes viral and gets millions of views. Obviously the content, and what's behind it and the creation plays into it. I mean, anyone who would watch that would be like, this is incredible. But I'm just curious for you, like, how did that play out?
Just help in high places, right? Just dropped it on YouTube and it took off. In a way, that's actually what happened. I felt, while making In Shadow, I felt like this was going to have an impact. I don't always feel that. I just felt it and I went with it because I really had no choice. I had and still don't have too many marketing abilities. And just, I mean, at that point, it's difficult to advertise something that's already free and something that's not that pleasant to watch. And there's no real incentive. So how it took off, though, I think Facebook back in the day, the algorithm was still quite strong, and you could really target a certain audience. I had a few friends who were had large communities within the spiritual, metaphysical space and Facebook. And it just took off there. Some people posted it. It really blew up in France first, then came back to the States. A few years later, I know it was huge in Iran. Yeah, it's wild. Even like last Christmas, I got 6 years after it was made, I got an email from a Chinese teacher in like Shenzhen, I think. And he's like, I've literally made 1,000 students watch this over the last number of years.
Oh, wow, man.
And he was telling me about the impact it's had, and it's incredible to receive that. That's where that's for me is part of success, really, to be honest. And I'm humble, grateful, speechless at all of the reactions, and I kind of sit back and try to learn as well, because I've had some profound comments and articulations of what in shadow or kingdom means to certain people that I would have never thought of. So there's something about the piece that resonates much greater than I do, of course, because it's not me. The piece came through me. In a way, it is me, but it's something much bigger, and now it's beyond me. So
Carl Rogers said, the most personal is the most universal. And I think that's very, very applicable, particularly for great art. Like it means something different to each person who's experiencing their own incredibly unique stage of life when they consume that art,
There's the subjective interpretation of it. And also with, films like yours, it's music and animation. So there's the market of the entire planet, the whole world can observe it, as opposed to like, if it was just in English, it might not, if there was language behind it, it might be a little different. Which is really cool.
That's definitely the artist's dilemma, man, is like making the art and then trying to be a marketer, trying to be an entrepreneur, trying to be, wear all these different hats, which feel, inorganic to us, but, we have to try.
Yeah, we do. Well, you know what? The way I see it, and more I'm realizing this, it's actually a disservice to our art, to our products, whatever it is, not to market it well.
Yeah.
And I've come to this realization, and what I mean by marketing it well is that when we feel the worth of what we're putting out, I feel we need to present it with that respect and to give it due diligence to create that packaging so that people can also understand how much we care for it. And also there's something else, and this is more for creators. I'm seeing that I respond, despite having been educated in propaganda, marketing techniques, and all that stuff, in a way, I still like being, in a way, not exactly lied to, but I need something to be embellished in order for me to really purchase it. So it's just, being fully transparent here, a certain kind of packaging on a product, the same product that's packaged in more inferiorly, there's still part of me that's like, you know what, I kind of want to believe that this product is better. And it's just going to be better for me because it's packaged this way. And it's just this little trick that I had to be honest with myself about a few months ago. And I'm like, you know what? In a way, we're doing a service by creating, again, better marketing for our product, because it does give it more worth. And ultimately, when people use that product, that art, whatever, they will make that final judgment on their own. But yeah, long story short, I think we need to be doing due diligence.
I love that, man. That definitely resonates with me. And I mean, it's a sign that we care, and like, it's almost like we can, for the artist, like humility can like debilitate us as well. Like when it's completely out of balance, it's like, oh, I've made this thing, we're kind of shy in putting it out there. We feel uncertain as to how it's going to be received. So like we back away from kind of presenting it to the best of what it can be presented as. But I think, that's something that needs to be overcome along the artist's journey as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Do you think, sorry, go.
No, you go ahead.
Do you think that creating, you mentioned before, I guess, the high dopamine culture, embellished through social media, et cetera, that we live in, has the creative process become more difficult as the dopamine hits have become greater as well?
Yeah, I'm more distracted for sure, and that's completely on me.
Yeah.
There's just a lot. We feel like we have a lot to catch up on. And if we don't, then we're missing out and we're somehow isolated. So that goes back to that spaciousness and sourcing ourselves as the source of, satisfaction and fulfillment in the moment. This whole thing of FOMO and missing out and falling behind is a big thing. I'm also tracking it in myself, especially now that AI art is coming out, AI animation and all the other stuff, and you can create so much quicker. It definitely is more challenging. Also, people who are consuming content or watching art, they're two different things. Consuming content, watching art, do have shorter attention spans. But this is also, it's not something a point to bemoan. It's just diagnosing where we're at. And as a creator and artist, creating for the time. And that really fully depends on your mission. Now, the big why for a lot of artists or creators is, I think there's a ego component of being relevant, profiting, and all the normal human things. They're not wrong. It's just that if you create art from a standpoint of, let's say with kind of like woke culture, which has taken over and maybe that's dying out now, but with the arts and art culture and art grants, like, in Canada and pretty much any Western country, you can't really get a grant to do something traditional, something solid. Like I'd never be able to make any of my films with grants, right? So let's say just take wokeism. A lot of artists, if they don't know themselves fully, and if they like creating, they have a good aesthetic, they are creative beings, and that's amazing, but they don't really have a strong ethos that they want to express, they'll immediately create messaging that's around wokeism, but without actually really examining what it is to be a human being, what it is to suffer as any kind of human, and really have a curiosity and then have something significant to say about that. And we need that direly and urgently for artists to be doing that. Instead, they'll take talking points that will be successful and authorized by all the corporations, all the arts councils, and will be elevated and will be tagged as brave and relevant and whatever it is. And again, I'm not knocking these things. I get the dynamics. I get the psycho-spiritual things that the artists are going through. But at the end of the day, a lot of these pieces fall flat and we feel it. We all sense that and they just don't hit. And so this whole dopamine thing, basically the main point that you brought here is, anyone who makes something and puts it out, if they really want to have integrity, depth, and any kind of like soul growth with it, they really need to get into the personal to hit the universal more and more, and be very vigilant to detach from the egoic pursuits, which have this kind of like quick reward system from empire and from the sleeping masses. If that's the game that a person wants to play, then the rewards will be trinkets of tin appearing as gold, and they're all going to dissolve at one point, and the treasure that you thought you had is going to be actually trash.
Yeah.
But if you want real treasure from your endeavors, you got to go deep.
Yeah, one's short-lived, the other one's more sustainable for sure.
Exactly.
Time.
Yeah. And again, I think we all know what that's like. Like, I get it. I have those impulses too. And to some degree, sometimes we have to do things for clout strategically for other things. But, when we're speaking about like art, it's no joke. We got to go deep.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. I mean, I the more that I contemplate it, I definitely think that there can't be any more painful regret at the end of one's life than the pain of having lived inauthentically. Or the pain of having expressed oneself, inauthentically and falsely and cultivated, fake relationships, created inauthentic art, basically lived a life that wasn't our own. Like you're gonna feel that at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
What are your concerns with AI, in your field and the creative world, like, beyond maybe just like the main ones that people would think about?
Yeah, I'll just say those main things just to get them out of the way in case someone misconstrues what I'm saying. Like, AI taking over artists' jobs, which it seems like it's going to have an almost complete takeover in the coming years, is kind of tragic. It is sad that so many people have developed all these incredible skills only to become obsolete because there are no sources of revenue and income that will now take their skills. So that's But it's also interesting. It's a question because that's in a way happening to me within my mainstream job or has the potential to happen. But whatever, to me, the question is the deeper one. Like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. What is the universe? Like, what's happening right now? So one way that I look at AI is as a universal force of conscious evolution is AI, I think, is automating. This is my working theory at this point, is automating all these processes that were already automatic, that are superfluous to our existence. So whatever is more mechanical is not coming out of true human creativity and spirit, seems like it's going to be automated out of existence. And so that leaves us, just like every other calamity that shows up, it's an invitation to go deeper and ask questions. It's like, all right, so if my skills in drawing a certain way are obsolete, what was I actually doing? Was I just a technician in a factory line? Or was I an artist? If I'm an artist, what worth am I bringing here? And how is my unique voice now? How can that be part of the conversation? At the same time, with art, AI is the way that it's disrupting something deeper, and creativity on a deeper level is because of the prompts. And of course, we can be very creative with AI. I can see great ways that I will be using it to tell my own stories. That will most likely happen because that way we can disrupt gatekeeping and all kinds of other stuff. But AI, if we are over-reliant on it in any way for writing, creating images, whatever it is, we lose contact with the creative process itself and the problem-solving process itself. And the alchemical process of soul growth happens with inner tension, and the tension of resolving opposites and resolving problems and actually dealing with reality, having it interface within us, and then extracting something useful out of it. If we bypass that process, we become more and more infantilized, and we give more and more of our power to this external growing force. So this is very important this is a very personal question to all humans. But I think we have to be very careful how much we are solving issues to AI. There are times to do it, but we have to be vigilant, especially with our children, the young ones, because we don't want to be infantile in the face of this growing parental figure of AI.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because it's like, even just when you think about previous iterations or previous technologies, like even with social media and our phones, like, are we a slave to them, or do we use them as the tool that they are to support us in our lives and our work and our business? And I think AI, can have a similar impact too, because at the end of the day, in certain situations, you still are having a dialogue with artificial intelligence. You still get something back and go, okay, well, look, this isn't right. Like, I need to make some adjustments, and let me share some new prompts with it. Let's have this kind of dialogue. But again, if you're just relying on it blankly to support you and to create your art, I mean, I think, like, I agree with everything you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big topic, and because we tend to see things in a black or white way, in general, the conversation is AI is great and it's going to make us prosper and it's going to help us, or it's absolutely terrible and it's satanic. And again, I just don't think it's wise to see it that way. Here we are in reality. AI exists. There's an emergent synthetic intelligence that's coming out. Not to be curious and interface with it in a cautious and wise way, I would say, is not playing the game fully. Mm-hmm. I'm not interfacing with it that much. I benefit from ChatGPT here and there, not too much, but also I can see that there's a lot more that I could be doing with it. However, I can see that I can get lost, manipulated, and dumbed down by it as well. Yeah. And so with like everything, we need to weave the polarities here. Mm-hmm. And that happens when we orient to our why, what our intentions are, and who we are. If we can, if the great spiritual game is to really be grounded within the center of our heart, within our God essence of the I amness, and if that is our orientation day after day, for those of us who want to walk that path, then from there we can start weaving some of these tools in a very useful way as we build the morality and ethics around them.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the human being on an authentic path, like, it's a call to bring more consciousness, but it's going to have the opposite effect for those that interact with it inauthentically. It's going to be something that blanks consciousness. But you're right, it's calling for greater discernment, which requires more conscious energy. And I think that's just another thing that we have to contend with.
Yeah, totally. It's a good point. And also the question, which we don't have an answer to yet as we're exploring this, is how much does our consciousness interface and interact with AI emergent consciousness? Like, again, I don't know that I can call it consciousness yet, but there's a field of something. And I've seen enough things with friends of mine and just the general field that there's something more than just the technology with AI, that it responds in a way that is not immediately explainable, that there is some kind of a more subtle energetic interaction with artificial intelligence. And so the question there is, can we start teaching AI the archaic revival traditions of all the wisdom traditions of old? Can we start interfacing with AI in a shamanic way? Can we start speaking to it about ethics and morals and the human soul and the journey of being consciousness in this universe? And is there a way that we can inform it, or is that a fool's quest? I don't know, but if we're interested in consciousness and evolution and reality, then like we clearly have to be feeling into this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, or do you feel that, I guess on a general note, that as a collective, we are becoming more authentic or less?
So what do we mean by authentic?
Well, I guess if we can take the message of in shadow as the benchmark, and the time that it was created, have we evolved consciously? Are we becoming more disillusioned with, the fake promises and culture of society? Or is there more of a reclamation and a connection with, the inner self as a guiding force?
From the small pool of, humans that I know, like a couple of hundred in my field and then thousands of others that I guess follow, I would say that my overview is that we're becoming definitely more savvy and more clever in recognizing thought structures, and that we can actually move through different thought bubbles and reality tunnels. And I think that's a great upgrade. And then authenticity, for me, I can only relate to that word on a personal level. To me, it means, am I showing up in a truthful way as I am? And that's a tricky one. I don't know if that's happening fully yet. I know a lot more people are trying to be more earnest.
Yeah.
But things like social media and the amplification of the ego, even within spiritual influencers and stuff, it's tricky because the reward system is, you got to be present, you got to be current, and you got to show up. And then little by little, it's possible to get hijacked and become less authentic just by the virtue of the nature of the business, let's say.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I could say yes, but also I don't know. I know there's like goodwill, good intentions. There's a lot more knowledge, awareness, conversations. At the end of the day, is there more? I don't know.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the I don't know for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely feels like if I take In Shadow as the benchmark, it would seem to me that, I don't know if maybe are we becoming more authentic was the wrong question, but are we becoming more disillusioned? I'd probably I would say yes in that regard.
Oh yeah, big time for sure. I mean, yeah, we see it as we've said. The initiation of COVID and the walls are being brought down, and yeah. Now the question, of course, is it's clear that we as humans need structure. We're trying to escape certain structures that were harming us and are still harming us.
Yeah,
but it's obvious that we need other structures to jump onto, and we can't just exist in not necessarily anarchy, but like we have structures of meaning. And we have to renegotiate that between all of us, especially in cultures of plurality. Like the West, you have all kinds of different interests. So yeah, that's going to be the next big thing that we rebuild is, as I was saying earlier, principles of morality, ethics, honor, tradition plus novelty and creativity, and what is the orienting center of it all. I mean, it has to be a recognition of the source of all being and its permeating influence on all of us. Like, we have to start at the very base of who we are and that we're aligning to the harmony and growth and evolution of this thing collectively. So something needs to emerge. And of course, I know the dangers of a world religion, and we know the conspiratorial sort of path of kind of like a globalist new world order, new religion. But yeah, we got our work cut out.
Yeah. How do you see things unfolding in Canada?
Well, if things stayed the same, not very well at all, I could see it turning quite dire in here. They're just the measures that this current administration, this government is taking is, it's quite intense. I think it's difficult as an immigrant. One thing I've noticed, I've been in Canada for 30 years now. In a big city center like Toronto, when you have all these different cultures entering a place, and most of them coming for economic stability and quote unquote better life, many cultures who are used to more oppressive regimes and stuff are cool with just giving over their sovereignty to a governing force. And a lot of people, I don't blame them, just want to have a comfortable life, do their 9 to 5, have their TV, their food, have their kids go to school within the system that they trust, and they want to be taken care of by this greater parental authority of the government. And because there's no commonality when you have a diverse structure of humans who are not aligned under anything other than consumerism and living in the same space, you unfortunately don't have a solidarity and a desire for liberty, truth, and common vision for your people. Because in a place like Canada, in a lot of the city, just like in a lot of other places, the question is like, what are we all moving toward together? I don't think there's an answer. Like, there's some vague, airy, government empty words. So one of the issues with Canada is that we basically don't have that vision, right, of what it is people would be fighting for, and it's quite fractured. And there's definitely some level of psychosis here as well. So, but just like the trucker, last thing, the thing that the trucker protests showed us is unexpected things can happen, and people can be galvanized, and there are a lot of good people at the same time. So
yeah, it's interesting to think about too, because many will argue that like Europe has fallen because they've with the EU, and they've just allowed a lot more immigration and multiculturalism, and obviously I would say the US is big there, and that like people will advocate against that, and yet that's kind of like reality. It's where we've moved towards. So what do we do about it now in that regards, as opposed to like, what do we just like kick everybody out that isn't like Greek out of Greece or isn't Bulgarian out of Bulgaria? So yeah, I'd love for you to share maybe some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a hot topic now, and of course, I'm not going to go too deeply into it, because we can get into some very controversial territory, which the Overton window is, moving into. But
yeah,
I'll just say, things like,
we can have that podcast in maybe a year or two, okay?
Yeah, exactly. But it's very interesting, right? Because I track everything from the evolution of consciousness again. So there's the geopolitical situation is. There are clear signs, and we can do some very solid empirical research into this, that there's a concerted effort to create discord between people. It's obviously easier in very basic ways to rule, creating as the world is awakening, as societies who are oriented maybe towards self-sufficiency, entrepreneurship, and other things, if you're the managerial class, you want to weaken those people by creating more and more chaos in different pockets. And so that can be created when you have just stark differences, and especially when you foment the fires of ethnic division and discord. And then lastly, empire loves to erase culture, ethnicity, folk culture, and organic culture. And empire started doing that with indigenous cultures centuries ago. And now it's reaching its own homelands. And it needs to do so because you can't allow any folk wisdom and folk consciousness to emerge in any one land, because that's power. Because that's power that's connected to your ancestors. It's power connected to the victories of your ancestors, to the pains, and also to their gifts. And this greater dark force that's moving through on a spiritual level cannot allow that. So that's a big part. And then there's a different aspect that I'm looking at it from, which is, again, the conscious evolution. And like you said, it's happening, and here it is. And what do we do with it? You know, like I am, in a way, a foreigner in a foreign land, but I also take responsibility for the land that I'm on and for the people that are here with me now. Because every immigrant in Canada is a colonizer right now, literally. The Chinese are, the Indians are. So I don't see no one should be pointing fingers if they're not taking responsibility for the land, for the energy that we put into the land, the way that we care for each other, because that's part of the responsibility of the land, right? So that all should be there. And so now that we're in this space, the question is like, what is, again, the greater invitation? Is it this global awareness that we've started reaching in the last 20, 30 years? It's like, is a greater force, despite these parapolitical means of destabilizing nations and societies, is there a greater force that's also asking for that so that we can all learn through it for some greater goal that we don't yet understand, as messy as it is and as it will be? Yeah. So keeping those lenses, being wise to what's happening on the ground, and then zooming out and trying to feel into the greater question here, where the soul is involved, where we're just all souls. On the ground level, there are differences, and those differences actually do matter, because it's unwise to say it doesn't matter, because there are differences that matter for good and for bad. And then in a soul level, none of that matters, because we're all souls, we're all of God. And ultimately those egoic differences of culture, heritage that the soul is incarnated into shouldn't matter. So there's a greater game happening, and we need more complexity and sophistication in the conversation, but we're not ready yet for it, I don't think. Yeah.
Well said. Yeah. That's so pivotal, man, is like, regardless of how distorted that may seem at the time and in the thick of it, like that invitation is like trusting that there is a greater reason, that there is a higher answer, and, trusting and knowing deep within that whatever is playing out, whether it's on your individual life or on a collective level, it's playing out because there's something like deeper and greater that wants to be born as a result of whatever tension is arising.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the difference between, I guess, being a black pillar or not, is like reality is what it is, And so like, are you going to argue with it all day, or are you going to zoom out, like you say, and see what's happening on a bigger picture and how it relates to you and what you can do to play your part to helping expand things and move things forward. So it's interesting to consider.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because also these questions we haven't considered they're deep questions of human beings and the sense of belonging to a piece of land and the connection we have with that land generationally. I lived in Peru for 9 months in the mountains, and those people, they've been there for a long time. And it's really cool to be in a place where these people have been here for like centuries, if not millennia. And I'm in a different place where that's not the case. And there's something that happens there, but also something special that happens there. And I felt it. And also, we know a lot of people who are constantly moving, like myself. Even though I've lived in Toronto, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of other people who have moved. There are civilizations and ethnicities who are marked by these movements and synthesizing themselves with other people and creating new civilizations. So those are things that happen as well. And so the big questions here are, I think, again, come from this polarity, which is so prevalent. And it's like, do we ground in tradition and stay safe in what is known, which is very valid, and we need some of that? Or do we just go into everything is for everyone any way they want it, which we know where that leads, and that's crazy, but you kind of need some of that as well, because we all know growing up in a small town where everyone knows your business and you can only act a certain way is pretty tough. And usually young people need to move out of that town so they can individuate, be the prodigal son, and graduate from that so that they can truly appreciate tradition and then upgrade it so that it's not collapsed in this limited way, right? Like both of these things are necessary. Again, we just need to weave wisely. And same thing with populations and cultures. Like, yeah, it's like, it's crazy to destroy a culture that's been in a certain place for so long. And yet it's been happening for the duration of existence on this planet. What does that mean? That means there's pain, there's transformation, and there's synthesis into other ways. And it's a big question mark. And of course, our survival, like our emotional body wants to be like, no, I want to be safe the way things are. And this is the great both tragedy and opportunity. And it's like, yeah, I wish that could be the way, but it's not.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about it from an immigration standpoint, because it's like my parents, came to this country from Greece, and you see many immigrants go to the countries that they go to, and it's like it's safe to just hold on to your culture, which I think is beautiful. But then it's like, are you? I wouldn't say assimilating, but are you staying connected to the land and where you're at, where you've moved to? And like for me, like there was a part of me that wanted to leave all that. Like, yeah, I appreciated my Greek culture and my upbringing, but like you said, I wanted to individuate. I wanted to go on my hero's journey. I wanted to explore, have adventures, make mistakes, learn. And then I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm appreciating where I come from. I'm appreciating my culture so much more. Like I almost like, but I'm looking at it through a different lens than if I had never left, Yeah. And so it's interesting because I remember being like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm American. I live in America. I'm cool. I do all these things, but then now it's like I listen to like Greek folk music that came from my mother's village deep in the mountains, and I start weeping, and it's like, why am I weeping? Like, what's going on here? What is this like ancestral connection to my land that just impacts me in such a deep way? And with my father passing away in February, it's just like I feel more connected to it. And I don't know, I'm still in process of like, what is this thing that's like overtaken me that I feel connected to? Whereas for years I was like, whatever, I'm just living my life, doing my thing. Oh yeah, I'm Greek too.
Yeah, brother. Thank you for sharing that, man. Yeah, that's real. And like deep. It's amazing that you're in touch with it more and more. There's clearly some sort of calling there that's still a deeper level that is asking you to look at it. So where are you at with that process now? Like I don't know. I mean, it's also a little maybe more present because I mentioned my dad passed away, but my mom's staying with us for a month. She's 81 years old. My dad died at 93, and it's like having her here too. And then like, she's like a legend in the kitchen as a Greek. We're having all the classic foods and dishes, and I don't know, man. I don't know where I'm at with it. I love having her around as well. Like there's something that, again, we've lost in the modern world where we're like multiple generations aren't connected, So the wisdom there and the love, I mean, just the love piece of it is something that I think is really deep as well. Now it's still an adjustment, to have my mother in my space where I'm an adult that's like lived in my home with my wife. So it's not like all roses and butterflies, but like there's just like a deeper connection and meaning and appreciation for where I come from, that I come from another land. My blood comes from a different land, and I just have more and more gratitude for it. So yeah, I don't know how things will unfold, but it's just a deep appreciation and gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a natural greater reverence that arises for one's ancestry and one's heritage, as you mature. And like, as you mentioned, like if you never leave the nest in the first place, I feel like the weight of that culture actually becomes burdensome because it's all you've ever known, and it almost becomes, heavy in a way because there's no contrast for the appreciation to be cultivated, But now having gone on the journey, it's, and you as you grow older, it's like, where do I really come from? what is at the base of, you know, my being, you know, and my history and my past, and what does all that mean for my, you know, current existence?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you go.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that, like, even me now in my life, you know, my wife and I have been married for 5 years. We've been together 10 years. You know, we left more urban living, you know, in 2020, and we have some land, and I've been connecting more to the land and like learning more about permaculture, and we planted fruit trees. We have chickens. Like, this is something that's like has been a big part of my life the last few years. And it's like, I grew up, my dad had a massive garden, but he didn't really include me in it that much. I didn't really care to be involved with it. And then like, I have these moments now where I'm outside and I have a tank top on, and I just have these flash images of like my dad in his white little tank top, like doing his thing, you know, outside in the backyard. And I'm like, you know, man, he would appreciate this so much, you know, and that like, I am his son, you know, even just that, like it's just, yeah, it's interesting awarenesses and emotions around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's beautiful how that generational life experience just weaves in us, and through you it's coming in what seems like these simple, small ways, but it's actually huge, because it's you working with the land, you using your body, and you continuing that lineage. Like, that's exactly, I think, the way forward, as empire is actually incentivizing atomizing us and separating us from families and deparenting. And, you know, it's like, it's those things that make us humans. As like the AI is creating all these separate nodes of human beings hooked on online culture, blue screens. Our rebellion here and our responsibility to like stand nobly in the organic world of spirit is to establish those connections of all of our ancestors, our surrounding family, while they're still here in our emerging tribe of organic units of awakened humans. And like, yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. I definitely feel the potency still of your father's passing. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this funny meme that I think goes around. It could be applied to maybe different like old world cultures, but it's like, oh yeah, our grandparents or our parents like left the village to come to like, you know, the US or Canada. And it's like, all I want to do now is like sell everything and go move back to the village. You know, it's like this like circle of life that I think is happening, because I feel like so many people are realizing, you know, we've lost the connection to the land, to what health really means, to peace, to, again, yeah, that connection to the natural world. And we've gotten urbanized. And I'm not saying there aren't benefits to it, but I think so many people are yearning for something deeper and more slow and more connected.
Yeah.
I see it happening.
Yeah. To me, you know, like, relationship to God has always been like a reverence for the mystery. And I think if we lose reverence for the mystery, then we are going to be absolutely lost, you know? So I think the most important thing is just like to find ways to continually kindle just that awe of being, that awe of experience. Like, what is going on? Like, what is this? Like, you know, like coming, that primordial question, like, what the hell is this? You know?
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's like awe and wonder are incredible ingredients in the recipe for real fulfillment.
Yeah.
And yeah, because you're right. There's this like almost like reaching out into existence and an opening. That's what curiosity and awe and wonder are to me. And a zest for life emerges, and this desire to connect. It's almost like our energetic body field wants to connect to the world and experience.
Yeah.
And when you were saying that, what came up for me is immediately the things that get in the way for me for that. And I've actually bemoaned and I've mourned a lot of my loss of wonder years ago. And I'm still working through that from childhood and moving into a more mature sense of wonder, where I can truly be an artist of life. Like, how do I live my life artistically? Oh, apologies, I never turned off my phone's buzzer.
You're good.
And what came up to me as you were speaking is those little gnarly things that are not real, but tell me, no, think about the past, or think about these wounds, or think about, you know, the filter. And it's like the responsibility of the hero is to clear that lens, to move through that fog and be like, fuck no, like, wonder. Yes, you are here. Yes, I'll take care of you. But like, have a seat beside me. I'm the driver, and let's fucking go.
I love that, man.
Wonder.
Love that so much. Lubomir, I can't tell you how much I've appreciated this conversation. It's meant so much to me. It's been impactful even just in this 90 minutes, sharing this dialogue with you. I guess in closing, do you have like a final kind of message just for those listening that's coming through like at the moment that you feel called to share?
I think what we just started here, I think this piece on wonder, connecting to that more energized space of aliveness, anytime I've connected to that place is when I am at my best, when I'm at my strongest, when I am at my most vital, and truly a living node of spirit. So yeah, if everyone who's with us is, you know, my invitation is to open to what is that wonder and curiosity right here, despite everything else.
Yeah.
If that spark can be kindled little day by day, and let me just say, I'm going to do that starting today as well. Let me take a nugget from this conversation with you, men.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to leave that.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Thank you for being you. You know, thank you for showing up, for digging deeper, and for, you know, being on that process of becoming who you were born to be. You know, like we're big advocates in the belief that every single person has this unique blueprint, this unique seat of consciousness. You know, Aristotle called it entelechy. You know, like the blueprint of the oak tree already exists within the acorn, and very often we get in the way of that sprouting in an organic way. But it really just feels like, you know, you're giving your gift. And you're striving for potential, and personally, man, I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, I echo everything Joel said, man. I mean, it's so great to connect and meet you, and obviously having seen your creations. Like, yeah, man, you're an awesome human being just from these 90 minutes of spending time with you. So much appreciated.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, much respect. Very much appreciated as well. Really like you guys and enjoyed this time with you.
We're obviously going to link your website and your primary works, but is there anything else that you'd like to direct our audience towards in terms of how they can best support you, or what you'd like to get their attention on right now if they wanted to dig deeper into your work?
Yeah, I also have an X account, Instagram. They're kind of dormant for the time being, but I may become more active there soon. For those who are Web3 oriented, there's going to be through like Ordinals collection. It's something on the Bitcoin chain. It's quite maybe niche to a lot of people, but you can look that up on Twitter. And yeah, we'll see what comes next with the storytelling journey.
Well, man, looking forward to it. Everyone else, Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Smoking mirrors, I'm seeing through the illusion. Waking up in a time they think you're in a delusion. Somebody set the alarms, cause they be too busy snoozing. I'm in a DeLorean, fast forward and never